So you see, what we observe in science is that islands that have already risen are not rising.
Nope, we can see that islands that are no longer active are prone to erosion. They may or may not be rising according to the tectonic forces to which they are being subjected. Our little knowledge is so much more dangerous than none at all.
Islands that we have observed many islands to rise, so therefore we can make strong inference that islands rise quickly because they are a product of volcanic activity which takes place very quickly.
Yet again, pay attention, Neph. Not all islands are volcanic. Not all volcanic islands form quickly.
There is nothing in science whatsoever that supports the idea, the uniformitarianists' false idea, that islands rise over millions of years of time.
Nice strawman argument there, Nephi.
Consider the Surtsey Island and many others that have risen in virtually no time whatsoever. They have countless strata, which evolutionists claim are millions of years old and took millions of years to form, one on top of the other, on top of the other. But the island of Surtsey has millions of strata.
Well, we've already ascertained in part 1 as to how millions of strata is an impossibility, but let's examine this a bit further. You have not made it at all clear as to whether you are claiming the strata as sedimentary or igneous. I covered the igneous scenario in part 1, so let's look at sedimentary strata, shall we, Dr. Neph? Are you seriously telling me that the sediments only occur under Surtsey and not in the surrounding ocean floor? Do you have core sample evidence to back this up? No, of course not. The only answer can be that any sediments pre-existed before the magma and ash were forced to the surface, and you know it. Despite you blocking me because I was pawning you on vestigials, please feel free to respond with a comment on this video if you dare.
And it formed in no time at all. And the same is true of lots of other islands. Countless strata produced in no time at all. So you see, it doesn't take millions of years for stratification to occur. Strata are formed very quickly in volcanic activity. There's just nothing in science. See, the evolutionist, the uniformitarianist has this cockamamie idea that the general processes, the geologic processes we observe in the Earth are going on at about the same rate now as they always have been. There are always exceptions. You know, there are always large local floods. They allot for that, and they allot for things like, you know, natural dams breaking and other things that we see, catastrophe things that happen today. That doesn't explain the entire geology of the Earth, though. It cannot be explained. It refutes. Can't be explained by uniformitarianism. It refutes it, you see.
Well, let's extend that rather perverse logic, shall we, Neph? So disastrous earthquakes that are typically under 15 minutes of earth tremor must prove a 15-minute-old Earth, right? I think even you, Neph, can see the massive flaw in that argument. You can, can't you?
Because the hydrology proves that all the stratification of the Earth took place by water moving at a fast pace horizontally.
No, the inference from what we observe today, remember the real science, is that sedimentary layers form very slowly in stable water conditions, like lakes or shallow seas that are not prone to strong currents. Then if you add the fact that in many cases layers have metamorphized, you have to be a fool to equate this with a global flood. Guess that makes you a fool, Neph.
And that stratas and layers, which are vertical, form like this together as they go. They form together, bloop, 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 as the water moves quickly across.
What you have described is impossible and can easily be proved in the lab as impossible. What a blooper, Neph. Oh, by the way, the lab is a workplace of scientists, out there in the field being the other place of work. And in the field there are numerous examples that make nonsense of such a comment.
And erratic boulders, which are sealed up inside mountains, prove also that the strata were formed very quickly because...
Oh, that is interesting. Erratic boulders were sealed up in mountains, were they? How did they get sealed there in the first place, Neph? For the record, Spotty, erratic boulders are anything but sealed in mountains. They have been proven to be moved by glaciers. Not getting mixed up with xenoliths, are we, Neph?
If there was strata were forming over millions of years' time up in a mountain, on top of a mountain, how does that work?
You tell me, Neph, because that is not any geology that I would recognize. A desperate straw man indeed.
You see, or that the strata were forming and then being pushed up slowly. Why would there be so many erratic boulders in so many mountains?
Duh, because there aren't any erratic boulders in mountains. Loose in mountain valleys, yes, of course. In theory, you could have an erratic covered by sediment, which was lifted to form a mountain by tectonics, but not in 4,500 years.
See? No, they're there because they've been washed there by fast-moving water as the Earth was flooded globally.
So the flood demolished the mountain to release the erratic. How do you know then that the erratics were actually embedded in mountains?
So you see, there's nothing in science that supports uniformitarianism. Uniformitarianism has been discredited by countless evidences in science.
Which, of course, is why the vast majority of geologists are uniformitarians. Oh wait, I forgot. They're all masons. Stonemasons, of course.
What we observe is that islands rise quickly, and therefore we can strongly infer that all islands rise quickly, with their strata already formed, millions of them, and didn't take any millions of years for them to form. It only took sometimes a few years, a few decades, sometimes months or days. Let me read something for you that I wrote to add to this. The erosion rate, according to mainstream geology, has removed approximately half of the strata from the Himalayan mountains over the last 20 million years, according to uniformitarianists. Similar erosion rates are observed for all the Earth's mountain ranges. At this rate, the mountains should have been eroded away and flattened long ago, if they were as old as mainstream geology claims they are. This contradicts the uniformitarianist concept as well, which states that the processes going on in the world today have been taking place at about the same rate, with the exception of cataclysmic events, throughout the history of the Earth, simply because it is illogical to believe that the mountains would experience little erosion for hundreds of millions of years, but then for no apparent reason would experience 20 million years worth of period of extremely high erosion. See, it doesn't make sense. There are no mechanisms by which the erosion rate could change so quickly and so dramatically, especially if uniformitarianism were true.
Well, of course, every exposed rock or any surface is prone to erosion from rain, wind, ice and friction. Trouble is, Neph, the Himalayas have been proven by real scientists to still be rising at 5 millimeters per year due to tectonic activity. That's a pretty slow rate, ain't it, Neph? And yet it is still overriding any erosion rate. So the erosion rate is an extremely slow process that would be a mere blink of an eye over 4,500 years. I do wish you would put some thought into your videos before going public.
Coastal erosion rates present the same problem for uniformitarianism, which is many meters per year in many places around the Earth, including the Carolinas, California, Japan, and Louisiana. At these rates, this would equate to hundreds of thousands of miles of erosion in only 1 million years. At the rate of only 1 centimeter of erosion per year, which is being extremely lenient for the uniformitarianist, it's much higher than that, which is far below the average, this would equate to 2,000 kilometers of erosion over a period of 200 million years.
And as the coast fringes erode, so they are offset by new sediments from estuaries. For someone who is obsessed with water, you are clearly out of your depth. In fact, you're drowning.
Which is less time than the uniformitarianists believe that the continents of the Earth have been spreading apart from the supercontinent and Pangaea.
Applying calculations to a strawman argument is of absolute no value.
This contradicts not only the uniformitarianists' imagined age of the Earth.
Imagined radiometric dating, the methodology on which you have been pawned so many times, tells us of an Earth of billions of years old. Even prior to radiometric dating, relative dating gave us an Earth of hundreds of millions of years old.
But also the time frame for when Pangaea broke apart, which had to be far less long ago than they imagined. The fact that the shapes of the continents still, quote, fit together like a puzzle is evidence that they could not have been eroding over millions of years.
Why is the Atlantic Ocean still widening, albeit at an extremely slow but measurable rate? How come the age of rocks matched by composition and texture separated by the Atlantic are of the same age? And how come they share the same millions of year-old fossils?
Furthermore, the erosion rates tell us that if the continents were as old as uniformitarianists claim, they would not even exist, since they would have eroded into the oceans.
Oh, you're so repetitive. Anyhow, I will repeat the answer. Plate activity can cause either a rise or a fall. The rise will often exceed erosion rates.
Surface erosion rates on the continents are currently at an average of 30 billion tons being deposited into the oceans per year.
Have you even considered how many billions of tons comprise the continents? That would be a figure crucial to any calculation. I don't know the answer, but it would be astronomically large compared to your erosion rates. No surprise then that you would choose to gloss over such a glaring omission. You are merely quoting large figures to impress the uneducated, gullible sheep that subscribe to your channel.
At only 2 billion tons of this being subducted below the continental plates over that amount of time, which leaves roughly 28 billion tons of continental material being deposited into the oceans each year. The amount of sediment that exists in the oceans should have been deposited in only 5 million years.
5 million years, eh? That's greater than 4,500 years by a factor of over 1,100. Some embarrassment to your global flood myth.
This tells us that all the sedimentary strata of the continents should have been washed into the oceans in only 10 million years. It is clear that the erosion of the continents cannot have been occurring over hundreds of millions of years.
You seem to accept 10 million years in a vain attempt to disprove billions of years. Bit of an own goal there, Neph.
You see, uniformitarianism is proven false by geology. Mainstream geology is wrong.
Mainstream geology is wrong. I'll remember that when I'm doing an oil change, or buy anyone some diamond jewellery. I'll remember that when a geological survey is done prior to building a nuclear power station. I'll remember that when I consider those who have degrees in geology, petrology and mineralogy, etc.
It's packaged in such a way as to deny the flood of Noah.
No. The flood story is self-refuting. Trust me, it does not require science to disprove it. It does a good job by itself. May I suggest that you read the Bible? Read it with an open mind and you may just be cured of your intellectual malaise.
And it's created with assumptions and circular reasoning.
Circular reasoning? I can only assume that you were referring to the biblical account as in Genesis, certainly not conventional science.
Uniformitarianism has been proven false. The millions of years don't exist. The erosion rate of the continents, surface erosion, and the coastal erosion rates prove the continents can't even be 1 million years old.
Just now it was 5 million, but if not 1 million or 5, then what figure did you arrive at? Couldn't have been 4,500 years, could it, Neph? Else you would have told us. Neph, I'd be ashamed to attempt to copyright this embarrassing nonsense. Don't be a turnip all your life.